Well, hello and welcome back to the DCPerform Podcast. My name is Rachael Weber, and joining me today I have Wonil Gregg, our VP of Customer Engagement Experience, and Helgi Thor Leja, who is our Senior Director. Hey guys, thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
We have two industry experienced executives that have been to dozens of CSCMP shows over the years. And today we're just going to kind of recap what the CSCMP Edge show is like from start to finish. DCPerform just exhibited at our first CSCMP Edge conference in September as a company. So it'll be really interesting to hear from these guys, the progression of how the show has developed over the years, some takeaways from the conference this year, and just how we brought it all to life.
So Rachael, CSCMP is a lot of letters. So Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, let's just call it the conference. For people who may not be familiar with it, I think they'll know, but CSCMP.
You guys have obviously been to dozens of these shows. So what do you guys remember quite when your first one was?
My first show, I want to say it was either 2004 or 2005. And from that show, we actually did some thought leadership at that show. And one of my favorite clients, Incomex, which is based in Miami and does work all over Latin America, actually came to one of our thought leadership shows or events. And so we've had an 18-year relationship with a great client as a result of CSCMP. So I have a lot of gratitude and appreciation for the organization.
You know, and then when you think of it on the flip side, as much as you have the opportunity to meet with customers and network with them, you build also internal personal relationships. As you evolve in your career, you leverage the resources and the assets of those networks that help you grow professionally, but also develop your personal brand and network.
It really attracts a global audience. I mean, from EMEA, APAC, LATAM, the Americas. So you're really having some truly unique conversations with people from all sectors of the industry that you can't do anywhere else.
Yeah, and when you think of how do you justify participating in an event like this, and the oversight and the expectations that leadership teams have from a budget perspective, it all comes down to at first understanding what are the goals and objectives of what you're trying to accomplish by attending. If you really want to get the most out of this, the planning and the execution is really important.
How far in advance were you planning, and can you dive in a little bit deeper on how you were able to determine those objectives and outcomes that you wish to see from the show and the metrics as well?
Sure. Experience and having a rear view mirror of having done it before always helps, right? You know the ones that you got the results that you wanted, you know the ones you didn't, and you start to learn how do we make this work. So, up front is really having clearly defined objectives of what is the outcome that you want to have. Is it building networks? Is it educational? Is it creating opportunities by meeting new people? And then creating some type of KPIs that helps you in the planning process that says, these are the amount of meetings that we want to have. These are the types of sessions that we have to go to. And then working with your team on how do we agree on what that is and presenting that case to leadership for budgeting approval. And once that's done, that's the hard part. Then it's a matter of getting your team all moving forward in the same direction.
I think from a sales perspective, we've often been, I hate to use the word ignorant, but ignorant of all the work that goes behind the scenes. So seeing what you and Rachael did for this event and the amount of effort and collaboration and the intensity of it gave me a much greater appreciation for all that behind the scenes effort.
Go through that process, but people have never been to a show before. And especially for those who just show up, some context of what you had to go through to make this work.
It really was a 6-month planning process. I was going through my calendar this morning and I'm like, holy crap, I was doing it for that long. But you start from the beginning. We wanted to make a splash, have a unique presence at Edge. I really wanted to highlight our team's unique personality and how we're fun and engaging. But, we're more than just a partner. It's a relationship that we're trying to nurture here with our customers.
We are really, really big on the customer experience, right? We want our customers to feel that they are loved, taken care of, their best interests are at heart, we're easy to work with. And I loved the juggling that you had, right? We had multiple different things. I could not juggle to save my life. We had a bunch of people in our company that could. But just to show how a collaborative effort with a client, if we're each juggling balls separately, it's significantly easier than trying to juggle 10 at a time. So that kind of experience and that discussion really made it fun. and I think engaged with a lot of people, both ecosystem partners as well as clients.
Once you have the design done and you have the activities planned, Rachel, talk through a little bit about once you got there, what you had to do to get the booth prepared and get the vendors lined up to support you.
I tried to squeeze in a few fun days before the show started. If you saw me on Broadway, no, you didn't. But but you get there, your booth's all set up, it looks beautiful. But then that's when the games begin. So you're having to work with all of these different contractors and electricians that are all on site, making sure everything works, technology. The amount of targets I visited, 3-mile radius of our hotel in Nashville is absolutely absurd. It's also a really cool experience because you get to know all of the support staff and the team and see how much effort that they've put into it behind the scenes. Once that's all done, that's when you start bringing in the team and then it's go time.
This year was different because it's the first time it's kind of school's out for the summer since COVID. And so while there was a bigger turnout than previous years, it was kind of muted in that it was mostly manufacturers, providers, not as many end customers were there. And I think because of that, the conversations were different. And the key differentiator this year was understanding that robotics and high-end automation has started to become commoditized. So really where the gold is now is in the data that these technologies are providing through IoT and the consumption of that data and the insights that it reveals in the day-to-day operations and how that impacts strategy.
The most interesting thing that I've seen, or the shift, is let's just take AMRs, for example. You have 6 River, you have Locus, you have Geek, you have a host of others, Fetch, for example. And our clients are wondering, okay, which one of these 6 really fits our business best? Clients feel overwhelmed. Every month there's a new technology coming out that does something a little differently than a technology that's more established has been doing.
It was really clear this year that the emphasis on global supply chain and the corporate social responsibility programs about diversity and inclusion, sustainability, sourcing through minority businesses to help your tier 1, 2, and 3 level backstream providers was on front stage. Yeah. And the fact that our industry has evolved to that point because of the global conditions and also technology as an enabler was really brought to the forefront. And I don't see that changing. That's not going away. Helgi, there was an event, there was a speaker you saw. You ought to touch on that about the whole inclusion and how we've evolved.
It was probably one of the most powerful speeches I've ever listened to. And she tabs herself as the blue collar CEO.
Oh yes, it's Mandy Renahan.
Yeah, Mandy, and she's Canadian, and she shares her life story. And so a couple of things she said is, it's really about how relatable you are as a person to build relationships with clients and to build relationships with people. And she kind of alluded to how she went into a stuffy meeting in San Francisco, and the 6 people were all wearing suits and ties, and she kind of came in her outfit where she was, basically just finished doing a project and she was dirty and just kind of came up to the session, and she actually said to herself, should I try to become more corporate or should I just be myself? And then she used some colorful language and said, well, I'll just be myself. And then in a matter of 2 minutes, she had built a connection. She had built trust. She had built a whole bunch of things where they started taking off their ties and started relaxing and kind of, relating more to her. And then in addition to the relatability, sincerity was another key word that she shared, is you have to be sincere. And if you can't do something, be sincere about it. Say, hey guys, that's really not what we do, but we have a partner that might be able to. Or that's right down my alley. I'm the best at that, and I'm going to knock it out of the park for you, and you're going to love me. The discussions around inclusivity, around the growth of women in supply chain, there were a lot of fantastic events, like Cushman Wakefield and Nicole Bennett ran a great one about female leadership, and there was a lot of great dialogue there.
She touched on also some environmental things that are going on. What really struck me was the idea of sharing our resources, the concept that the competition that occurs between companies and now evolving to nations, how do we share resources instead of looking at it as being one company owns these resources and can't share. Think of a 3PL model that's open. In order to solve problems, the burden isn't on the supply chain professionals to solve the problems. The challenges that we're facing is a human challenge in how we consume and how we're marketed towards for consumption. As long as that continues and human behaviors are a consume, buy, the supply chain will always be in a reactive mode, trying to catch up. I think that the gold lining to data is going to be able to reveal those business case opportunities that then we can use to transform human behavior that drives supply chain consumption.
Any major takeaways that you could potentially bring back to customers after your experience at CSCMP? Can you guys touch on a few of those?
Wonil and Gina Anderson and Brad Barnett of Callaway Golf, to me, gave one of the top presentations during the show. And Brad talked about the brand awareness of Callaway, how their associates value the brand and they support and they're ambassadors for their brand. He shared some fantastic stories about one gentleman who drove 4 hours from Dallas down to Houston to deliver something because it knew it had to be delivered and just took it on himself to do that. And he won an award, the Eli Award. But the interesting thing was really the questions after the presentation that Wonil and Brad gave. And a lot of people were asking, what's the secret sauce? Even though we have robotics and technology and automation, it still comes down to people making it work. And you talk about culture. You talk about actually listening to associates, actually acting on associate recommendations, not just taking it and not doing anything with it. And so that culture kind of builds upon itself to where your associates, as they bring in new people, that culture gets infused. And then rewarding those behaviors that reinforce the culture, I thought really is a secret sauce. And I think a lot of people saw that.
Yeah, I love that story that Brad shared. And it ties into the whole theme, I think, that how our industry is evolving to understand that it's the end customer experience that we are enabling. And for decades, the mindset has always been kind of that B2B model. But we've evolved now where it's B2B to C. And as we drive towards how do we start to address human behavior with the limited resources that we have in the consumption society that we're building and how that supply chain enables that singular mindset of that end customer, what they're thinking is going to be how we're going to evolve as an industry and ultimately impact day-to-day lives.
Well, Wonil, Helgi, thank you guys so much for joining us. This was an awesome episode. And yeah, I think some major, huge takeaways from this conference as a whole. A lot of amazing messages we heard. And yeah, thank you guys so much for your time.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you. Great seeing you both.
Thanks.